The ballroom of the Kensington Royal Hotel sparkled like a jewel box that November evening. Natalie Morrison smoothed the silver satin of her gown, watching crystal reflections dance across marble columns while London's elite mingled beneath chandeliers that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. She had attended dozens of these charity events with her parents, but tonight felt different. Something in the air made her skin prickle with unease. Her mother, Victoria Morrison, glided through the crowd in a stunning navy dress that complemented her auburn hair perfectly. Every gesture spoke of practiced elegance, from the way she held her champagne flute to the tilt of her head when listening to conversations. Her father, Thomas Morrison, stood near the auction display, his salt and pepper hair immaculately groomed, his laugh booming at appropriate intervals. They looked like the picture of marital success. Natalie had grown up believing they were proof that true love existed. She wove between clusters of guests, nodding politely at familiar faces. The string quartet played something classical that blended into the background chatter. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Everything seemed normal, perfect even. Yet that nagging feeling persisted. Natalie found herself near the corridor leading to the powder rooms when she heard voices drifting from behind an elaborate floral arrangement. Two women stood partially concealed, their designer gowns rustling as they leaned close in conversation. Natalie would have walked past, but then she heard her mother's name spoken in that particular tone of false concern that always preceded gossip. Victoria Morrison is actually doing it. The first woman's voice carried clearly. She filed the papers 3 weeks ago. My solicitor confirmed it yesterday morning. Natalie's feet stopped moving. Her champagne glass trembled in her hand. Honestly, it's about time. The second woman replied. That marriage has been a performance for years. I heard she already bought a villa in Tuscany. Leaving on Friday. 23 years of pretending to be happy. Can you imagine the exhaustion? And poor Thomas had no idea until the papers arrived. The first woman continued. Completely blindsided. Though anyone with eyes could see she'd checked out emotionally ages ago. Separate wings of the house, separate holiday trips, separate lives. The words hit Natalie like physical blows. Divorce. Tuscany. Friday. That was 4 days away. Her parents, her solid foundation, the love story she'd believed in her entire life. It couldn't be true. But even as denial screamed in her mind, pieces clicked into place with horrible clarity. Her mother's frequent trips to visit galleries abroad. Her father's long hours at the office. The way they never touched anymore, never laughed together, never looked at each other the way they did in old photographs. How had she missed it? How had she been so blind? The champagne glass slipped from Natalie's fingers. It shattered against the marble floor with a sound that seemed to echo through the entire ballroom. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. Eyes found her. Natalie felt her chest constrict, her breathing becoming rapid and shallow. Panic clawed at her throat. She needed to leave immediately. She needed air. She needed to be anywhere but here. Natalie spun on her heel and walked quickly toward the exit, her vision blurring with tears. Her carefully applied makeup began to run as she moved faster, her heels clicking frantically against the floor. She barely registered the faces turning to watch her hasty departure. The perfect facade of her family, the illusion she'd trusted completely, was crumbling. She needed privacy before she fell apart completely. She rounded the corner toward the restroom corridor at almost a run and collided hard with someone solid. Strong hands caught her shoulders, preventing her from falling backward. Natalie looked up through her tears at the man she'd just crashed into. He was tall with dark hair styled with casual perfection and eyes the color of amber. His jaw was strong, his expression immediately shifting from surprise to concern. The tailored black tuxedo he wore spoke of wealth, but it was his gentle grip and worried gaze that stopped her spiraling thoughts momentarily. Are you all right? His voice was deep and genuinely concerned, not annoyed at being nearly knocked over. Natalie tried to respond, but only a broken sob escaped. More tears spilled down her cheeks. She was making a scene, falling apart in front of a complete stranger, and she couldn't stop herself. "I'm so sorry," she managed to choke out. "I didn't see where I was going. I just need to find somewhere quiet. Come with me," the man said decisively. Without waiting for permission, he gently guided her by the elbow through a door marked private, up a narrow staircase, and through another door that opened onto a rooftop terrace. Cool November air hit Natalie's face. She gasped it in desperately, her hands gripping the stone railing as she tried to steady herself. Below them, London stretched out in a sea of lights, the Thames winding through the city like a dark ribbon. The sounds of the party faded to a distant murmur. The man stood a respectful distance away, his presence calm and solid. "I know this is technically off limits, but I happen to own this hotel. We won't be disturbed up here." Natalie turned to look at him properly. Despite her emotional state, she registered that he was striking, but more than that, his eyes held genuine kindness. "Do you want to talk about it?" he asked softly. Natalie laughed, a harsh sound edged with hysteria. "My entire life just exploded. I discovered my parents are getting divorced by overhearing strangers gossip about it at a party. My mother is apparently moving to another country in 4 days, and I'm the last person to know. 23 years of marriage ending, and I had to learn it from people who barely know our family." She wiped her eyes with trembling hands. "I don't even know your name, and here I am completely falling apart in front of you." He smiled gently. "Julian Westbrook. And you're Natalie Morrison." She blinked in surprise. "You know who I am? Your family has been featured in enough society magazines," Julian said. "Plus, I recognize your father from various business conferences." He paused. For what it's worth, finding out that way must have been absolutely devastating. "You deserved so much better than that." His simple acknowledgement of her pain made fresh tears well up. 23 years. She whispered. "How do people just walk away from that much history?" Julian was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. "My parents were married for 28 years when my father died. I was 16. My mother told me at his funeral that even 28 years wasn't enough. That she would have traded everything for just one more day with him." Natalie heard the old grief in his voice. "I'm sorry for your loss. The point is," Julian continued, "some people find that kind of love and some don't. And sometimes people who thought they had it realize they were mistaken. It doesn't make your parents terrible people. It just makes them human beings trying to find happiness, even if the timing and method are painful for everyone involved." Natalie studied him. "How are you so understanding about all this? You don't even know me. Maybe that makes it easier to be honest," Julian said with a slight smile. "No history, no expectations, no need to say the right thing instead of the true thing." They stood together in comfortable silence. Natalie felt her breathing slowly return to normal, the panic that had gripped her chest beginning to ease. She didn't know this man, but somehow his presence made the world feel slightly less like it was ending. "Thank you," she said finally. "For not letting me have a complete breakdown in front of 300 people who would have been gossiping about it for months. Anytime you need to crash into someone during a personal crisis, I'm available." Julian replied, his eyes warm with gentle humor. Natalie smiled despite everything. "I should probably go back down. Face my parents. Have the conversation that's apparently overdue. Or," Julian said slowly, "you could stay up here a while longer. Let them wonder where you disappeared to. Give yourself time to process before you have to be the composed daughter dealing with her family's implosion." Natalie considered this. Down there, her mother was probably searching for her, rehearsing whatever explanation she'd prepared. Her father was likely doing the same. And she would have to smile and nod and pretend she understood when really she felt like her foundation had been ripped away. Actually, she said, surprising herself with the decision, that sounds exactly what I need right now. Julian's smile was genuine and warm. Excellent choice. Now, I happen to know where the hotel keeps its best wine. Wait here. He disappeared back through the door. Natalie found herself alone with the city lights and her turbulent thoughts. Her phone buzzed insistently in her clutch. 5 missed calls from her mother, 3 from her father. She silenced it without reading the messages. Julian returned carrying a bottle of red wine and 2 glasses. Owner's privilege, he said with a wink. This is from my private collection. As he poured, Natalie realized that this unexpected moment with a stranger might be exactly what she needed. Not answers or explanations, but a brief escape from the wreckage of her family. They raised their glasses. To unexpected collisions, Julian said. And to strangers who catch you when you fall. Natalie added. Their glasses clinked softly in the night air. For the first time since overhearing those devastating words, Natalie felt like maybe she could survive this. Her world had shattered, but she was still standing. And in this moment, she wasn't standing alone. 3 weeks had passed since the charity gala, and Natalie's world had shifted in ways she never imagined possible. The divorce was now public knowledge throughout London's social circles. Her mother had moved to Tuscany as planned, and her father had buried himself in work with an intensity that frightened Natalie. But through all the chaos and heartbreak, one constant had emerged that she hadn't anticipated. Julian Westbrook had become her anchor in the storm. They had been meeting almost daily since that night on the rooftop. Coffee in the mornings at small cafes far from Mayfair where no one recognized them. Lunches when their schedules aligned, tucked away in corner booths of restaurants Julian knew wouldn't attract attention. Dinners that stretched late into the evening, conversations flowing as easily as the wine. What had started as Julian offering support during her family crisis had evolved into something neither of them had planned but both felt powerless to resist. Natalie sat in a tiny bookshop cafe in Notting Hill, far from the upscale establishments where her family's friends gathered. She checked her phone for the 5th time in as many minutes, smiling when his message appeared on screen. Running 10 minutes late. Meeting ran over. Order me whatever you're having. Trust your judgment. She was typing a response when the chair across from her scraped against the wooden floor. Natalie looked up expecting Julian, but instead found herself staring at her mother. Victoria Morrison looked different than she had 3 weeks ago. Her auburn hair was shorter, styled in a way that made her look younger. She wore casual clothes, jeans and a cream sweater, instead of her usual designer outfits. But it was her expression that struck Natalie most. Her mother looked lighter somehow, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "Hello, Natalie," Victoria said softly. "I hope you don't mind. Your father mentioned you come here sometimes." Natalie felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Anger at being ambushed. Hurt that still felt raw and fresh. But also curiosity about this woman who looked like her mother but seemed like a stranger. "You could have called," Natalie said, her voice cooler than she intended. "You haven't been answering my calls," Victoria replied gently. "I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But I needed to see you, to explain properly, face to face." Natalie gestured to the empty chair. "Julian wouldn't arrive for another 10 minutes. "Fine. Explain why you're destroying our family." Victoria winced but sat down. She folded her hands on the table, and Natalie noticed she wasn't wearing her wedding ring anymore. "That's not what I'm doing, sweetheart. Our family was already broken. I'm just being honest about it instead of pretending anymore." "You were pretending?" Natalie felt her throat tighten. "For how long?" Her mother was quiet for a moment, her gaze distant. "Since you were about 10 years old. Maybe longer." I don't know exactly when it shifted from love to just coexistence. Your father and I, we grew apart gradually. Different interests, different goals, different ways of seeing the world. We stopped being partners and became roommates who shared a child. Natalie felt tears prick her eyes. But you seemed happy. All those parties, all those smiles and photographs. Was it all fake? Not fake exactly. Victoria said carefully. We genuinely cared for each other. We still do. But caring about someone and being in love with them are very different things. We stayed together because it seemed easier than facing the truth. Because we thought it was better for you to have parents under one roof, even if those parents barely spoke to each other behind closed doors. So you stayed miserable for me? Natalie's voice cracked. That's supposed to make me feel better? No, darling. Victoria reached across the table, her hand hovering near Natalie's. We stayed comfortable. That's different from miserable. We had our routines, our separate interests, our own lives that occasionally intersected. It wasn't terrible. It just wasn't a marriage anymore. It was a performance we'd both grown tired of acting in. Natalie pulled her hand back. And now? You get to run off to Italy and start fresh while Dad falls apart and I pick up the pieces? Your father is not falling apart. Victoria said firmly. He's adjusting to change, just like we all are. And I didn't run off anywhere. I moved to a place where I can finally pursue the art career I gave up 30 years ago when I married into expectations of what a Morrison wife should be. I'm 50 years old, Natalie. I want to spend however many years I have left being true to myself instead of playing a role. Natalie stared at her mother, seeing her differently now. What about what I want? What about having parents who love each other? What about believing that marriage means something? Marriage does mean something. Victoria said softly. It means partnership, respect, genuine affection. It means waking up each day and choosing each other because you want to, not because you're trapped by vows you made decades ago to people you no longer are. Your father and I didn't have that anymore. Staying together would have been the real lie. Before Natalie could respond, her phone buzzed. Julian's message appeared. Just parked. Be there in 2 minutes. Victoria noticed her daughter's expression soften as she read the message. Is that him? The hotel owner everyone's been whispering about? Natalie felt her cheeks flush. I don't know what you're talking about. Her mother smiled knowingly. Darling, you've been seen together all over London. People talk. The question is, are you happy? Natalie was taken aback by the directness of the question. I don't know. Maybe. It's complicated. Love usually is. Victoria said. But answer me honestly. When you're with him, do you feel like you can be yourself? Or are you performing, the way your father and I did for 20 years? Natalie thought about Julian. About how she could cry in front of him without embarrassment. How she could laugh at silly jokes and share random thoughts without filtering herself. How he listened when she talked, really listened, instead of waiting for his turn to speak. I feel like myself. She admitted quietly. More than I have with anyone else. Then hold on to that. Victoria said. Don't let fear of ending up like your father and me stop you from taking the chance. We failed at marriage, yes. But that doesn't mean marriage itself is broken. It just means we weren't right for each other, even if it took us too long to admit it. The cafe door opened and Julian walked in. His eyes found Natalie immediately, then shifted to Victoria with polite curiosity. He approached the table slowly, clearly sensing the tension. I can come back later if this is a bad time. Julian said. Victoria stood, gathering her coat. No, stay. I was just leaving. She looked at Natalie. Think about what I said, sweetheart. And call me when you're ready to really talk. I'm not going anywhere. After her mother left, Julian slid into the vacant chair. His expression was concerned. Are you okay? That looked intense. That was my mother. Natalie said, still processing the conversation. First time we've really talked since everything happened. Julian reached across the table and took her hand. His touch was warm and grounding. Want to talk about it? Natalie intertwined her fingers with his. She asked if I was happy. With you. And what did you tell her? Julian's voice was carefully neutral, but she could see vulnerability in his amber eyes. I told her the truth. Natalie met his gaze. That when I'm with you, I feel like myself. That you make everything seem less overwhelming. Julian's smile was soft and genuine. Good. Because you do the same for me. These past 3 weeks have been the best I've had in longer than I can remember. They sat together in comfortable silence, hands clasped on the table between coffee cups and the afternoon light filtering through bookshop windows. Natalie felt something settle in her chest, a sense of rightness that contrasted sharply with the chaos of her family situation. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was her father. Can we meet for dinner tonight? There are things I need to explain. Natalie showed the message to Julian. Looks like it's time for round 2 of difficult family conversations. Do you want company afterwards? Julian asked. Or space to process? Company. Natalie said without hesitation. Definitely company. That evening, Natalie met her father at his club in Belgravia. Thomas Morrison looked older than he had 3 weeks ago. There were new lines around his eyes, and his usually impeccable posture had slumped slightly. But when he saw Natalie, his face brightened with genuine warmth. Thank you for coming, he said as they settled into a private corner of the dining room. I wasn't sure you would. Natalie studied her father. I'm angry, she said honestly. But you're still my dad. I want to understand what happened. Thomas nodded slowly. Your mother and I, we made mistakes. A lot of them. The biggest one was staying together long after we'd stopped being truly married. We thought we were protecting you, giving you stability. But all we did was model a relationship that looked perfect on the outside while being hollow inside. Mom said you grew apart. Natalie said. We did. Thomas agreed. But that's not the whole truth. The real truth is we were never really suited for each other in the first place. We married because it made sense. Our families approved, our social circles overlapped, we looked good together in photographs. But we never had that spark, that deep connection that makes people want to weather storms together. He took a sip of his whiskey. Your mother is an artist at heart. She always was. She sees beauty and possibility everywhere. I'm a businessman. I see numbers and strategy and risk management. Neither way is wrong, but they're fundamentally different ways of moving through the world. Over time, instead of those differences complementing each other, they drove us apart. Did you ever love her? Natalie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. I loved the idea of her. The life we could build together. But if I'm being brutally honest, I don't know if I ever loved her the way she deserved to be loved. And she felt the same about me. We cared for each other deeply, but care isn't the same as passionate, choose you every day, can't imagine life without you love. Natalie felt tears building. So what was I? Just a product of a convenient arrangement? Her father's expression softened. You were the best thing that ever came from our marriage. The only thing we both got completely right. Your mother and I may not have worked as a couple, but we both love you more than anything in this world. That will never change, regardless of where we live or whether we're married. Natalie wiped her eyes. I met someone, she said suddenly. Since all this happened. And it scares me because I keep thinking, what if we end up like you and Mom? What if what feels right now becomes hollow and empty later? Thomas reached across the table and took her hand. Then you'll have learned from our mistakes. You'll communicate honestly instead of letting resentment build. You'll choose each other actively instead of just coexisting. You'll be brave enough to walk away if it stops working instead of wasting decades pretending. But Natalie, don't let our failure make you afraid to try. Some people do get it right. Just because we didn't doesn't mean you won't. After dinner, Natalie walked through the cold London streets toward Julian's apartment in Knightsbridge. He'd given her a key the week before, a gesture that had felt significant and terrifying all at once. She found him in his kitchen, cooking pasta and humming along to jazz playing softly in the background. When he saw her, he immediately set down the wooden spoon and pulled her into his arms. "How was it?" he asked against her hair. "Clarifying," Natalie said. "And sad. But also hopeful somehow." Julian pulled back to look at her. "Hopeful how?" Natalie took a breath. "Both my parents told me essentially the same thing. That they stayed comfortable instead of being truly connected. That they performed a marriage instead of living one. And they both said I shouldn't let their failure make me afraid to try for something real." "And are you?" Julian asked quietly. "Afraid?" "Terrified," Natalie admitted. "But also more certain about this, about us, than I've been about anything in my life." Julian cupped her face in his hands, his amber eyes searching hers. "I know it's fast. I know the timing is terrible with everything you're going through. But Natalie, what I feel for you is not comfortable or convenient or a performance. It's real and intense and sometimes overwhelming. And if you need time or space, I'll give you that. But I need you to know that I'm all in with this. With you." Natalie stood on her toes and kissed him, pouring 3 weeks of emotion and confusion and growing love into it. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I'm all in too," she whispered. "Whatever happens, we face it together." Julian smiled against her lips. "Together," he agreed. Outside, London continued its endless rhythm. But in that moment, in Julian's kitchen with pasta boiling on the stove and jazz playing softly, Natalie felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. She felt hopeful. Her parents' marriage had ended, but maybe that ending was making space for her own beginning. A different kind of love story. One built on honesty instead of performance. On choice instead of obligation. On passion instead of convenience. And for the first time since that devastating night at the gala, Natalie believed that maybe, just maybe, love could be something beautiful and lasting after all. 6 weeks had passed since the gala, and Natalie had settled into a new rhythm of life. Her mother called weekly from Tuscany, their conversations gradually becoming easier and more genuine. Her father had started seeing a therapist and seemed lighter, more present than he'd been in years. And Julian had become woven into every part of Natalie's daily existence in ways that felt both thrilling and natural. They had stopped hiding. No more obscure cafes or tucked-away restaurants. They attended gallery openings together, had dinner at popular establishments, walked through Hyde Park hand in hand. London's social circles buzzed with speculation about the Morrison heiress and the Westbrook hotel magnate, but Natalie found she didn't care. For the first time in her life, she was living authentically instead of performing for an audience. On a crisp December morning, Natalie sat in a coffee shop near her flat in Chelsea, reviewing designs for the charity foundation she was launching. Her phone buzzed with a message from Julian. "Big meeting with the Thornton family today. The hotel deal in Edinburgh. Wish me luck. Dinner tonight to celebrate?" Natalie smiled and typed back. "You don't need luck. You're brilliant. But yes to dinner. I'm cooking." She was gathering her papers when a man slid into the chair across from her. He was perhaps 45, impeccably dressed in a navy suit with silver cufflinks that caught the light. His dark hair was perfectly styled, but his eyes were cold, calculating. Something about him immediately set Natalie's instincts on alert. "Natalie Morrison," he said, as if tasting her name. "Even lovelier than the photographs suggest." Natalie's guard went up instantly. "I'm sorry, do we know each other?" "Not yet, but we share a mutual connection." He placed a business card on the table between them. "Vincent Hartley. Hartley Property Development." The name meant nothing to Natalie, but something about the man's smile made her skin crawl. "I'm afraid I don't have time for unsolicited business pitches. If you'll excuse me." "This isn't about business," Vincent said smoothly. "Well, not your business anyway. This is about Julian Westbrook." Natalie's hand froze on her bag. "What about Julian?" "You see, Julian and I have history." Vincent leaned back casually. "He outbid me on a prime property in Manchester 2 years ago. Cost me approximately £40 million and a rather lucrative development opportunity. I'm not someone who forgets such things." Natalie felt her heart rate increase. "That has nothing to do with me." "Oh, but it has everything to do with you." Vincent pulled out his phone, swiping through images. Natalie saw herself and Julian at various locations across London. Walking through Covent Garden. Laughing over dinner. Kissing on a street corner in the rain. Her blood ran cold. "You've been following us," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "Gathering information," Vincent corrected. "There's a distinction. Now, here's where things get interesting. Julian is about to close a major deal with the Thornton family. They own a chain of historic properties across Scotland that would make an excellent addition to the Westbrook portfolio. The Thorntons are very traditional people, Natalie. Very concerned with reputation, stability, family values." He leaned forward. "They're also quite religious and conservative in their views. If they were to learn that Julian is romantically involved with a woman whose family just imploded in spectacular fashion, whose mother abandoned her marriage for a bohemian lifestyle in Italy, whose father has been frequenting his club's bar rather heavily these past weeks, well, they might reconsider their partnership." Natalie felt sick. "My family's situation is private." "Nothing is private in our circles, dear," Vincent said with false sympathy. "And perception matters more than reality in business. You represent instability, scandal, dysfunction. Everything the Thorntons claim to oppose in their business partnerships." "What do you want?" Natalie asked, though dread was already pooling in her stomach. "I want you to walk away from Julian," Vincent said simply. Quietly, cleanly. "Tell him you've realized the relationship moved too fast. That you need space to deal with your family situation. Do that, and these photographs never surface. The Thornton deal proceeds smoothly. Julian's reputation remains intact. And if I refuse?" Natalie's voice was barely steady. "Then I ensure these images, along with some carefully selected details about your family's rather messy divorce, reach the Thorntons before their final meeting tomorrow afternoon." Vincent's smile widened. Julian loses a deal he's been cultivating for 18 months. His reputation takes a hit with every traditional family in Britain's business community. And he'll resent you for being the catalyst of his professional embarrassment. He stood, adjusting his cufflinks. "Either way, you lose him eventually. But this way, at least you save his career and leave him with positive memories instead of bitter ones. You have until tomorrow morning to decide. I'll be waiting for your call." Vincent walked out, leaving his business card on the table like a poisonous artifact. Natalie sat frozen, her mind racing. Everything she'd built with Julian over the past 6 weeks felt suddenly fragile, threatened by forces she couldn't control. She spent the rest of the day in a daze, barely able to focus on anything. By evening, she'd made a decision that felt like swallowing glass. She would walk away. She would sacrifice their relationship to protect Julian's career, his dreams, everything he'd worked for. It was the right thing to do, even if it destroyed her. When Julian arrived at her flat that evening, his face glowing with excitement about his meeting, Natalie felt her resolve waver. He pulled her into his arms, spinning her around. "The Thorntons loved the proposal," he said, kissing her soundly. "Final meeting is tomorrow afternoon, and then we sign. This is huge, Natalie. This deal could expand Westbrook Hotels into an entirely new market." "That's wonderful," Natalie managed, her voice sounding hollow even to her own ears. Julian pulled back, studying her face. "What's wrong? You seem distant." Natalie opened her mouth to deliver the speech she'd been rehearsing, but before she could speak, there was a sharp knock at her door. She opened it to find an elegant older woman with silver hair and Julian's amber eyes standing in the hallway. "Grandmother?" Julian appeared behind Natalie, shocked. "What are you doing here?" Catherine Westbrook swept into the flat with the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "We need to talk. All of us." She fixed Natalie with a penetrating stare. "Especially about Vincent Hartley's visit to you this morning." Natalie felt the blood drain from her face. "How did you know about that?" Catherine settled onto Natalie's sofa as if she owned it. "I make it my business to know everything that affects my grandson. Vincent Hartley is a snake, but he's a predictable snake. When I heard he was sniffing around the Thornton deal, I had him followed. Imagine my interest when I learned he'd approached you." Julian looked between them, confusion turning to anger. "What is she talking about?" "Natalie, what happened?" Natalie sank into a chair, her carefully constructed plan crumbling. "Vincent Hartley came to see me this morning. He has photographs of us together. He threatened to show them to the Thorntons along with details about my family's divorce unless I break up with you." Julian's face went dark with fury. "That manipulative piece of rubbish." He moved toward the door. "I'm going to destroy him." "Sit down, boy," Catherine commanded. "Getting emotional won't solve this. Strategy will." She turned to Natalie. "You were planning to walk away, weren't you? To sacrifice your relationship to protect Julian's business deal." Natalie nodded miserably. "What else could I do? I won't be the reason his dreams fall apart." Catherine's expression softened slightly. "That's noble but foolish. Let me tell you something about Vincent Hartley. He's been trying to take down Westbrook Hotels for years, ever since Julian's grandfather refused to go into partnership with him 3 decades ago. This isn't about one property deal. This is about vendetta." She pulled out her own phone, showing them a series of documents. "I've spent the afternoon doing research. Vincent Hartley is currently under investigation for financial irregularities in 2 of his developments. He's also being sued by 3 different investors for breach of contract. His business is hemorrhaging money, and he's desperate." Julian leaned forward. "So he's trying to sabotage my deal because he needs the Thornton properties himself." "Exactly," Catherine confirmed. "But here's what he doesn't know. I've known Margaret Thornton since we were girls at boarding school together. We've maintained our friendship for over 50 years. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that she values loyalty, honesty, and genuine love far more than she values the appearance of propriety." She looked at Natalie directly. Margaret's own daughter went through a difficult divorce 5 years ago. The family stood by her completely. They understand that life is messy, that families are complicated, and that judging someone for their parents' choices is the height of narrow-mindedness. But Vincent said they were conservative and traditional. Natalie protested. "They are," Catherine agreed. "But traditional in the ways that matter. They believe in hard work, integrity, keeping your word, and fighting for the people you love. Not in maintaining false appearances or condemning people for circumstances beyond their control. She stood, gathering her coat. Tomorrow morning, you two will attend the meeting with the Thorntons together. Natalie, you will be introduced as Julian's partner. We will be transparent about your family situation because honesty is the foundation of any good business relationship. And if the Thorntons have a problem with it, then they're not the kind of people we want to be in business with anyway. Julian shook his head. Grandmother, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I won't risk Natalie being humiliated or put in an uncomfortable position. Catherine fixed him with a stern look. And I won't allow my grandson to learn the wrong lesson from this situation. If you let Vincent Hartley bully you into hiding the woman you love, you become no better than Natalie's parents. Choosing convenience and appearance over authenticity and truth. She moved toward the door, then paused. Love requires courage, Julian. Real courage. Not the courage to walk away when things get difficult, but the courage to stand together and face whatever comes. Your grandfather taught me that 60 years ago, and it's the most valuable lesson I ever learned. After Catherine left, Julian and Natalie sat in stunned silence. Finally, Julian took Natalie's hands in his. You were really going to leave me to protect my business deal? His voice was soft but intense. I couldn't let you lose everything because of me. Natalie said, tears streaming down her face. Your dreams, your work, everything you've built. Julian pulled her into his arms. You are part of my dreams now. Don't you understand that? A business deal, no matter how significant, means nothing if I lose you in the process. I would have chosen you over the Thornton properties without hesitation. But your career, your reputation. Natalie protested. We'll survive or it won't. Julian said firmly. But I can't survive losing you because I was too cowardly to fight for us. My grandmother is right. Love requires courage. And I'm choosing to be brave enough to stand beside you, regardless of what anyone thinks. Natalie looked up at him. What if the Thorntons walk away? What if being with me costs you this deal? Then we'll build something else. Julian said simply. Together. Because that's what real partners do. They face obstacles as a team, not as one person sacrificing themselves for the other. He cupped her face gently. My parents had 30 years together before my father died. You know what I remember most? How they faced every challenge side by side. Financial troubles, health scares, business setbacks. They never let obstacles drive them apart. They used them to grow stronger together. The next morning, Natalie stood beside Julian in the conference room of Westbrook Hotel's London headquarters. Her palms were sweating, but Julian's hand in hers was steady and warm. Catherine sat at the head of the table, regal and composed. The Thornton family arrived promptly. Margaret Thornton was a woman in her 70s with kind eyes and an air of quiet authority. Her son, David, and his wife, Claire, accompanied her. After initial pleasantries, Julian cleared his throat. Before we proceed with business discussions, I want to introduce you to someone very important to me. This is Natalie Morrison, my partner. We've been together for 6 weeks, and she's become an integral part of my life. Margaret's eyes assessed Natalie with sharp intelligence. Morrison? Related to Thomas and Victoria Morrison? Yes, ma'am. Natalie said, her voice steady despite her nerves. They're my parents. They recently divorced after 23 years of marriage. Margaret nodded slowly. I heard about that. Difficult situation for everyone involved, I imagine. It has been. Natalie admitted. But it's also taught me valuable lessons about honesty, authenticity, and the importance of choosing courage over comfort. Catherine spoke up. Julian wanted you to know this before proceeding with business discussions. Transparency and integrity are foundational values for Westbrook Hotels. Margaret smiled, a genuine warmth spreading across her face. I appreciate that very much. And for what it's worth, Miss Morrison, I don't judge people based on their parents' choices. I judge them on their own character and how they handle adversity. She looked at Julian. My daughter went through a painful divorce several years ago. Our family stood by her completely because we believe in supporting the people we love through difficult transitions, not abandoning them when life gets messy. David Thornton added, anyone who thinks a family divorce somehow reflects poorly on the adult children involved has clearly never experienced real life. What matters to us is integrity, work ethic, and how people treat each other. The meeting proceeded smoothly from there. By the end, contracts were signed and hands were shaken. As the Thorntons prepared to leave, Margaret pulled Natalie aside. My dear, she said quietly, I've been married for 52 years. The secret isn't finding someone perfect or having a perfect family. It's finding someone who makes you want to be brave. Someone worth fighting for. Hold on to that young man. He clearly thinks you're worth fighting for too. That evening, as Natalie and Julian celebrated with Catherine at an intimate dinner, Natalie's phone rang. Vincent Hartley's number appeared on screen. She answered on speaker. I assume you've made your decision. Vincent's voice was smooth and confident. I have. Natalie said clearly. The answer is no. I won't be manipulated by you or anyone else. Julian and I are together, and we're staying together. Then you've just cost him his deal. Vincent said coldly. Actually, Julian interjected, the deal closed this afternoon. The Thorntons signed with full knowledge of our relationship and Natalie's family situation. They didn't care. Because unlike you, they value substance over appearance. There was a long silence. Then Vincent said carefully, this isn't over. Oh, but it is. Catherine's voice was steel-wrapped in silk. You see, Vincent, while you were busy playing games with my grandson, I was busy contacting some of your investors. They're very interested in learning about certain financial irregularities I've uncovered. I'd suggest you focus on saving your own failing business rather than trying to sabotage ours. She ended the call with a satisfied smile. And that, she said, is how you handle bullies. Not by hiding or sacrificing, but by standing your ground and fighting smart. Later that night, as Natalie and Julian walked along the Thames, she leaned into his warmth. Thank you. She said softly. For not letting me walk away. For being brave enough to fight for us. Julian stopped walking and turned to face her. The city lights reflected in his amber eyes. Natalie Morrison, these past 6 weeks with you have been the most real, most honest, most alive I've felt in years. Whatever challenges come, we face them together. That's not bravery. That's just loving you. Natalie kissed him, pouring everything she felt into it. All around them, London continued its endless rhythm. But in that moment, beside the river with the man she loved, Natalie understood what her parents never had. Real love wasn't about performance or convenience. It wasn't about hiding when things got difficult or sacrificing yourself to protect the other person. Real love was standing together. Fighting together. Choosing each other every single day, not because it was easy, but because it was worth it. Her parents' marriage had ended, but from its ashes, she'd learned how to build something stronger. Something authentic. Something lasting. And as Julian held her close under the London stars, Natalie knew with absolute certainty that this was just the beginning of their story. A story built on truth, courage, and the kind of love that doesn't run from challenges but faces them hand in hand. Together. The end.